Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Software Plaza podcast. I'm Twain Taylor, editor at Software Plaza, and we bring you conversations each week from different parts of the cloud native computing ecosystem. And we talk to startup founders, we talk to CTOs, we talk to developer relations folk, just different people doing different things, and just get them to tell their story about what they're building, what they believe behind what they're building, their approach to how they do stuff. And the fascinating thing is, every single startup, every single person comes with their own unique approach to just how they see the CNCF ecosystem and landscape. And it's always fascinating to just bring out each one's perspective that comes on this show. And I enjoy doing that. If you like what you hear, go and check out all of our other conversations from the past. We've been doing this almost 3 years now. So you'll find a lot of interesting conversations from various guests. Head over to our website, softwareplaza.com, or just look for the Software Plaza podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. With that, I'm happy to welcome our guest for today. He's Colin Griffin, and he's the founder and CEO at Krum.io. That's KRUM.io. They're into platform engineering. That's going to be our focus for today. So I'm quite excited to be having this conversation with Colin. Colin, welcome. It's great to have you with us. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks, Twain. I'm excited about chatting today.
All right, and I want to start off just congratulating you on making it to the Inc. 5000 list. Uh, you've had 244% revenue growth, and that's staggering. And from little chat we were having just before we started, you told me you're bootstrapped. So quite a fascinating journey there, just for your organization. So I wanted to start with just congratulating you, and wanted to just give you the opportunity to introduce yourself to everyone listening, watching. Tell us about your journey to founding Krum, and then just a little bit about Krum to get us started.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And thanks for the shout out. I started Crum about 10 years ago, really as a place to do work, right? There were several
That's
products and
really
things that I wanted to build, and I
that's really
wanted
early days.
to, sorry.
That's really early. That's really early days when we talk about the Kubernetes space, because Kubernetes was just getting started back then.
Yeah, exactly. And I had seen at the company I was working for before was in the critical infrastructure space, and we were developing software that needed to run inside of our customers' environments, like inside of their IT infrastructure. And I went on this journey of being a software engineer that started to spend more and more and more time working with the IT teams at our customers to say, hey, it's not our software that's broken. Here's why that camera won't connect. Here's why that access door, that door won't open when you hit this button, figuring out and helping them understand their own systems. And um, our delivery complexity became more and more, like, it was exponentially more challenging as we got more customers at that time. So we needed to build an infrastructure, start to understand, can we build this protective layer around our systems? And that started to look like containers. And that company got acquired, and we went through some changes, and I left about that time. And so I needed, like I mentioned, I needed a place to do work. And what I wanted to go full bore into, we saw the future in the value in containers. And we were at that time, Kubernetes was an upstart thing. Nobody really knew. Kubernetes didn't really have an identity. It was a project. It had just been named, and there was like cattle, and there was Swarm, and there, of course, Docker Compose and all these other options, and we hadn't picked any of those yet. But part of this journey was I needed a sandbox to work on that, and
Mhm.
the name Crum doesn't actually really originate from anything. It was the fun part for me is I like to build things, and I like to create things, and I like the idea that something can evolve into its own. And I really, that's a big people approach for me too, is I want people to help not have their journey dictated, but create, use the value and the things that come from their growth and from their past to create really interesting things, and then find ways to connect that and tap into that. But the name Crum was just easy to say. It didn't mean anything derogatory or negative, and the website was available. And what I found out quickly is I had to add where on the end of it so that people would realize, oh, it's technical. We do some technical things.
Mhm.
But yeah, we were building tooling and things for cloud native very early on, and we that's been a key story as part of our bootstrapping process. So we've been there from the beginning of containers, which has been a lot of fun.
Okay, okay. All right. So Krumware, do you refer to the company more often as Krumware or Krum?
It's like we say our friends call us Crumb, if that makes sense. It's like first name, last name. This is the fun
All
way.
right.
We actually did an experiment a few years ago, and we started to be more forward with Crumb and Crumb.io. And people would say, "Was that? Well, I've heard of Krumware. Is that the same thing?" And I never thought that Krumware would have the ring to it that it does for a lot of people. So we lead with Krumware, and we just say our friends call us Crumb. So in conversation, it's like you called me Colin, not Colin Griffin. So yeah, it's Crumb.
Neat. You've been since then as well quite involved with the CNCF, and you're part of the Platform Engineering Technical Community Group. Tell us a bit about that, just your involvement with the CNCF, how you got involved, how that's been going, the things you do to help out.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. A key part of our journey early on, and we were talking before, we're totally bootstrapped. Like we don't have any outside investment. And you have to get creative in order to build a company that way. And we took on some services contracts to build out next generation, cloud native software platforms for folks. And a big challenge was when it came time to ship that software, the infrastructure teams, security teams, network teams, other folks at our customers didn't understand what we were using and they weren't able to adopt, or they were maybe they didn't understand containers and were negative about it or something like that. And we had to understand, well, hey, what's the real problem? Well, the real problem is they don't understand it. So let's include tools that help them manage the tools that we need as a part of that, in order for us to be able to do our job. So how do we build in and provide these tools as an expected part of the software that we're delivering, like as a cohesive part, give that to them so they could deliver it back to us so that the developers, us, could actually ship our software. And that was a really important part to our evolution. We, as Crum, we went full bore into that idea. We said, hey, this is an important thing. This is going to be a problem everywhere. And in fact, we think that this is a big problem that's holding people back from letting their developers use the tools that they want to use, or the languages they want to use. There's this IT like social and compliance even challenge that's preventing that. So I went to I was like, is anybody else having this problem? How do we communicate and build some understanding? Has somebody come out with white papers? Is there something that defines a right way to do this? We needed to build some credibility. We needed to see if there was an industry standard, and the reality was there kind of wasn't. And so I showed up at KubeCon in Detroit and met some
Which year
folks.
was
There
it?
was a talk. Yeah, there was a talk about um, from the technical advisory group App Delivery about how do we give people the right tools. And I went to that, and it opened my eye. It was like, yes, these are my people. These are the problems. And it turned out they were writing a platform engineering white paper, and doing some other things. And I wanted to be a part of that conversation, um, and for developing our own practice. But also it just kind of morphed and turned into, I'm going to show up to this every week, and I'm going to participate in these conversations. And over time, that's grown into now, I'm a co-organizer of the group. We've helped shepherd the changes to the group from the platform working group, like people normally are used to referring to it as. And so now we're in this new era of the CNCF platform's TCG, and the technical community group is a new concept too. So we have to have all these conversations with the CNCF on what should this organization look like. But it's all about how do we champion and provide access, resources, support, artifacts, industry guidance to help further that this thing that we now call platform engineering is important and is accessible and is a strong conversation, and we can see how pervasive this concept is now. So it's been fun being a part of that, and I look forward to helping continue to shepherd that.
Wow.
Sorry,
Yeah.
that was a lot. That was a long story.
Yeah, the details matter. Um, I'm wondering which year that was, and I'm also curious to know about the white paper. If you could share some of the key points from the white paper, I think that would be really relevant to our conversation today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think KubeCon Detroit was it was either 2020 or 2021. The years are blurring together. I think it was 2021. It was the right after COVID. People were still wearing masks. You weren't sure if you showed up and you were going to be able to talk to anybody, and that kind of thing. And I'll look it up as we're going through it. But that was a kind of a key point in our changes too. When we started in 2016 and we found these challenges. And so when we started to work with customers, we'd say, we're not just going to build this software package for you. We're going to provide the tools, and we're going to provide the enablement, and we're going to help your people adopt these tools and adopt these languages and use the things that we do as reference. Like, it's all about facilitation and driving adoption and organizational growth and making your developers happy and all that. Customers, though, said, that's all great and sounds cool, but can you just build it? They were thinking price tag. They were thinking we were just doing more than they needed as opposed to it being part of the process. Well, COVID
Hmm.
hit, and that conversation flipped entirely. We'd be on calls, they'd change our language. We're like, uh, yeah, well, we're going to build it and it's all going to be best practice, and we're going to have to do some extra stuff along the way. Is that okay if we maybe do a workshop for you and things? And people would stop us and say, like, okay, we know you can build it, but can you teach us? Can you help us build it? Can you help? It came out of nowhere, when before they weren't going to buy that. So that COVID hit, I think, is actually an important part of the trigger for platform engineering. But I think it's a good testament to it's like necessary. This is a real necessary thing that grew out of a need, and not just somebody put a fancy name on something to go sell some licenses.
Interesting. Tell us a bit more about this need. What was it about COVID and this change in work culture that made platform engineering necessary?
There was a technical aspect of it, which was maybe the remote work, and maybe the need to have better digital tools to allow people to function independently, to work from their homes or basically in their silos, right? And find ways to better drive collaboration when we're not in the office in a war room together knocking our heads or throwing paper airplanes at the cubicle we need to talk to, that kind of thing. So I think there was a technical need born out of that. But then the social need was also around retention. At that time, we had to try to maximize what we could, what the value we could get out of our employees, the value we could get out of the company. And it, I think that companies were in this interesting position where they couldn't just try to squeeze more juice from the orange. They had to find ways to help the oranges be more fruitful, I guess, if that makes sense, right? And because they
Mm.
couldn't just fire people, you couldn't just go out and hire new staff. There were all these question marks. And so it became, we need to protect ourselves, right? We need to enable what we have right now to do more and to maximize that. And I think that was a big driver for that.
All right, all right. Wow, interesting. So give us a definition about of what platform engineering is, and also talk to us about related to that. Uh, what have you seen that's stayed the same since 2020 that we started talking about platform engineering to today, 5 years down the line? What's stayed the same and what's changed, if anything at all, around platform engineering and how people think and talk about it?
100%. So for me, the definition of platform engineering is identifying the tools and processes needed to that we can deliver to our end users or internal users at an organization in order for them to do their jobs more effectively. Right. A lot of folks focus and fixate on this concept of help developers specifically. Well, developer has turned into especially with AI and everything else, it's turned into someone with technical capabilities. Right? That document that somebody writes is actually an artifact. It's that process that somebody writes is actually a run book. That run book is actually a set of commands and logic, right? Which may turn into an automation. It's everybody's doing something that's a part of this technical ecosystem and how a company runs. So platform engineering became the practice of how do we make that glue and how do we make that stuff work together. Um, Over time, I think it's evolved from a a very technically focused practice where like a very tool focused and implementation focused practice to we're seeing the injection now of platform as a product and product mindset. And these were terms that were around but weren't thought of as foundational components of platform engineering. They were thought of as, well, when I'm ready for it, I can start thinking that way. And instead, now we're bringing existing concepts of customer service mindset, of that platform as a product mindset, this idea that we need to manage lifecycle of a platform, but also what's evolving is we're perceiving more, I guess maybe the scope of the platform is expanding and we're including more and more types of people as our part of our end user definition. And so we're evolving past that IDP and now we're evolving into platforms, right? And thinking about maybe this isn't, I like to say that platform engineering isn't a new concept. It's just a new name or a new conversation about these concepts. So it's like the productization of IT at the end of the day, feels like what platform engineering is. So this
Mhm.
year, in 2026, uh, platform engineering continues to solidify, but what people are thinking about and asking about is how do their platform engineering organizations evolve? What does it look like to start a platform engineering organization? What skill sets and things do we need? I think before the question was, should I do platform engineering? Now the question is, yes, I should. How should I start there? And so that's where a lot of the conversation is centered around.
Right. And I wanted to get into the how now. So you mentioned that a lot of times people think of platform engineering as just for developers, but then, in your work with different organizations, you've found that it's a broader, it's not as simple. There's a broader, uh, you know, group of people using the platform, groups of people. Uh, Talk to us a bit about that. I find that quite interesting, and I'm sure many listening to this as well would relate that they've heard it being said to them as platform engineering is an internal platform that's built for developers to get stuff done easily and consistently. But you're adding a little bit of color to that by saying, don't just think developer and stop. There's more to it. So kind of flesh that out a bit more and what it means and how you understand it as you work with organizations.
100%. So organizations are very complex. They have a lot of different teams with different siloed roles, and silos aren't necessarily a bad thing. I think we've gone through a phase, and you can look at the platform like the hype cycle, and you can look at the increases in tooling complexity and a lot of these developer challenges where we need to reduce cognitive load and things like that. Those concepts are all critical, but they need to be applied in different ways. And organizations sometimes tend to expand and expand and expand the roles of a group or of a type of role, right? And platform engineering is almost born out of that too, where maybe it's this, for some organizations, it's an evolution of DevOps, or it's DevOps now has to manage more things on top of the things they've already managed. It's like this increasing complexity. We need a new name for this, or we need to kind of scope and define this domain. But throughout our organization, we can't continue to just blur the lines all the time and expect more people to be more technical in more ways. It's unsustainable. And so this, as our understanding, as our need and our understanding of the fact that we need to develop some sort of centralized approach or some sort of tool, we have to evaluate who needs to benefit from this, who's participating in the life cycle and management of this, what roles do they have, whether is it a consumer or a maintainer, but like if you're maintaining and helping run the platform, is that the role of just this one platform team? Or like what about the networking team? What about the security team? They're not part of the platform team. So you're saying that the platform team needs to take over their jobs to provide security? No, it's not. You're like, we can't do that. We need to have this mentality of what tools can I provide to the security teams so that they can help reduce my burden as the platform engineers to help maintain the success of the platform, and also provide security and capabilities to the developers who don't want to think about security, right? How do we provide them with guardrails? So it turns into this facilitation exercise. But the key thing under the hood is understanding who those users are, how they do their jobs, how you can make impactful changes or provide them with impactful services, or provide ourselves as platform engineers and platform team with additional capabilities that I can pass through and provide to other people. We have to go understand the organization deeply, what it's trying to accomplish deeply, what the end users need to accomplish deeply, and how they do their jobs. It becomes our job to start figuring out how to glue and how to connect and how to facilitate. But by creating a platform team, I think a key thing to think about is we need that to be a silo, and we need that to have expected outcome, expected role. And by having a dedicated cross-functional team that you can call platforms, you can say, you know, you throw the holy water at them or something and say, your job now is to create an amazing interconnected experience for our people that makes our company run better. Go invest in that. Go make that happen. Go handle that. And until you dedicate a team to that, or even if it's a virtual team, until you give them that authority, organizations stay in this limbo that their people feel about, are you going to make me do more work? Am I taking on more roles and things from, so I see you let some people go. Do I take their job now? Are you going to keep putting more on my shoulders? What is this platform thing? You want me to be a platform engineer now? It kind of puts us down that path of, okay, somebody's going to be dedicated to this. And then that team can then turn around and say, hey, I want to use your service. Hey, I want you to help me build something. Hey, we start these conversations for inner sourcing and other things, and we can start creating a really interesting and fun collaboration engine. But at the core, there needs to be a strategic mandate, a top down, like, hey, we're going to build better tools as an organization, and there's a team dedicated to that, and we're calling them platforms. And we understand if you're a platform team, you're taking these approaches, right, that the company needs. So
Wow,
lots of fun
interesting.
there. Yeah, before platform engineering seemed like if we're ready for it, we can do this type of thing. It felt optional, and now it's feeling more and more mandatory as an approach.
All right, all right. Wow, sounds like the approach you take, it's not like, you just get a ready-made platform product, something like, I don't know, Crossplane or one of them, or one of the commercial, platform products, and you just plug them into your organization and you're good to go. It sounds like you do a lot of prep before that. There's discussions happening across teams, and there's a strategy that the approach involves a strategy that you come up with for these organizations. I'm curious to know a little bit more about your approach and just that journey, what it involves before you even bring on the product itself, which could be a single product or a bunch of different interconnected pieces that make up a product. But even before you get to the tooling, talk to us a bit more about the journey for an organization that works with you. How do you lead them through that journey? What are some of the key milestones that you get them to reach at each stage, what they look like, so that people listening to this, watching this, can get an idea that okay, this is what it takes uh, to actually do platform engineering, and it's not just plug in a tool and you got started. Talk to us about the journey that you take people on.
Sure. Yeah, we've over time it's fun as we've grown, and I mentioned before the kind of that transition around COVID and the idea like what people were asking for, looking for. We feel a lot of our approach was when we started early on, and 10 years is a lifetime, it feels like. And why aren't we bigger than we've been today? Well, we were taking this approach before people were really asking for it, before the industry had really kind of developed this inherent need. And so we say we had a solution to a problem that didn't exist yet. So when we would go to customers and say, hey, we need to spend time doing user experience mapping. We need to do discovery. We need to understand what makes you tick. They'd say, no, we don't want to spend time on that. We just want you to build something. And that's an approach that they'd take with a lot of teams is they'd hire a new team and they'd build a tool or outsource it, and something would get built, and then this code base would exist and it would just sit there, and nobody else would know how to maintain it. There was no reuse that could happen in the organization. It's just, sure, I can build something, but do you want it to be valuable? Now over time, as our credibility has grown, as the market has evolved, now it makes more sense. And larger companies can afford to and have the ability to do this internally, but we start with investing in user experience. And when I say user experience, it's more broad than doing like a UI UX assessment or something like that. It's understanding internally who are your users, what do they need to do, and in what ways, and how do we build a technical solution back from that. When we go into organizations that want a platform, we often find they think they have an understanding of how people do work. Then you ask questions like, hey, list the capabilities that your developers need. What's a capability? Well, it's a thing that somebody needs to do. That's all. Like, how do you deploy databases? They say, oh, I don't know. This team did it this way, this team did it this way, this team did it this way. Okay. How do you build your artifacts? Well, I don't know. The companies don't actually really have a good idea of how they do their work. And so we start with building that understanding and going and inventorying and seeing how do teams do their work, in what ways, where is there opportunity for reuse, where do we find, how can we find challenges or things that take a long time or are difficult? How do we talk to the developers? How do we talk to the database folks? We start to build this kind of social network and this understanding of all the parts and pieces and how they play together or refuse to play together. So we start with that, and then we try to find technical pathways that enable people to collaborate, but also drive outcomes like artifact outcomes or system, like tangible outcomes, because adoption is a huge challenge for a platform. If you put a platform team in a silo and they spend a year building a box and they come out and say, hey, developers, you're going to change the way you do work now and you're going to use our platform, they'll refuse and they'll quit and all that. But if along the way, if we make them feel included and heard and we give them an opportunity to participate in the development, then some really, really amazing things can happen. And it also eases the burden on the platform team to say, hey, I need some of your time to build an interface for using this tool. Can you do that? Oh, and it looks like you like to use Vue.js a lot. Can you build it in Vue? Oh, how can you help us understand how other teams can do more in Vue? We have a lot of sample approaches and things that like the design and development of a component system is a really strong one. If a company doesn't have a component system already, and they're not standardizing across their applications what components we're using and centralizing that, we can build a centralization strategy that's developer focused, that also connects the designers to the developers and helps enforce developer to designer and designer to developer flow, which also includes the designers in the platform assessment and the user experience process to help understand and map how we're going to build interfaces for internal people. Like, we find these technical projects that we can implement to give real tangible value and outcomes, but then drive that overlap and drive that interaction. And you use that component system to build the platform. And then those components get reused in applications, which better integrate with the platform. So it just becomes this machine that you help start build, which is fun. So starting with understanding and introspecting and understanding how an organization operates, and then finding areas of opportunity to drive collaboration across teams as you build this thing out, and you can continue to hone and refine what that journey looks like. We have a talk
Mhm.
at KubeCon that we just gave this past November. Ryan Halleck, our lead designer, wrote and gave that talk. And that was a lot of fun to see him up there. But there's a thing he introduced me to, which is, I think, really poignant, which is this 1-10-100 concept. And it means that, like, for every challenge or problem you find at the design level or in the user experience kind of definition level, you can save $1, right, per hour. If you find it in, it's going to cost you, if you find it in development, $10, or like 10 hours to fix what could happen in 1 hour. And then if you find it in production, it will probably be 100 hours to fix what you could have fixed for 1 hour. And there's evidence in the industry that it actually goes a step further. If it's an internal tool, it's actually 1,000 to 1 at that next step. And I think that reinforces this idea that we need to involve design and we need to do user experience early, like as early as possible, so that we understand what this looks like and then evolve it as we go. So there was a
Right.
lot there. Um, but yeah, it's all about finding some meaningful, impactful project that the teams can work together to build, and which can help determine the outcome of the platform.
Yeah, it sounds like a very involving and a complex process where there can often sometimes be tussles, people pulling different directions, opinions on how to do things. Uh, how long do you think this should take typically in an organization? What's an average or a healthy time frame to think of this? How many people should be involved so that it's meaningful? Because I guess otherwise it could really get out of
Sure.
hand if there's too many cooks in the whole process. Yeah. So what expectations should people have in terms of time frame and who should be involved?
Sure. I think if if a company doesn't invest in understanding what the needs are, then, I mean, we've seen platform teams take 2 or 3 years to get something delivered that and actually get traction. That's way too long. I think I would normally expect, and maybe it's easier for smaller organizations or maybe a subset, if a subset of an organization took this on first, it should be probably 6 months, optimistically 12 months, normally. What we're seeing is, if you've done this before and you pick sides, like you rinse and repeat, it actually should be about maybe 3 to 6 months is a little bit more. It's very optimistic to do the 3 months, right? That's a small scope, whatever. But 6 months, I think, is a reasonable target to have a platform in place and serving a specific subset of users. That's a big differentiator for us. And our value is, like, we're trying to bring that been there, done that, and productize that to get teams started in their platform engineering as fast and as accurately as possible. So the nice thing there is it's our job to pick sides, right? So we can come in and, like a doctor, right? We can come in and prescribe what needs to be done And it gives you inherently, by bringing us in, you give us that authority that I talked about. It's easier sometimes to bring an outside group in and give them the authority and say, hey, yes, they know what they're doing. We've blessed them, listen to them. It's the same interaction that needs to happen if somebody builds their own, hires their own platform team internally, and we say they've got the authority. They're going to do the job. They're going to figure out what tools you need. Go use them. Go listen to them. Go talk to them. Give them whatever they need. Somebody's got to, give that authority. That's really important.
All right, all right. Yeah, yeah. Wow. So we've discussed quite in depth just your views on platform engineering and even the process of just getting ready for using a platform. I was wondering if you could now segue into talking about the platform itself, what it would look like, what are some of the options based on the different kinds of organizations you worked with, what choices are there in terms of how the platform should be built, what components it should have, shouldn't have. And if you could even give us a tour of a sample of what a platform looks like, something that you usually would design or have designed in the past. Let's move to talking about the platform itself.
Sure. Yeah, it's fun. A platform usually turns into more of an architectural diagram at the end of the day. If we think about the actual design of the platform, there are lots of parts and pieces, and some organizations don't even have their own IT documented, which is funny. But
Mhm.
um, your platform itself was kind of this would be this web of things. One thing that we talk about with customers is like some customers are quick to think of. I actually have a good diagram to show a little bit of this as kind of like a platform economy, and so I'll
All
show
right.
that. But customers sometimes like or people we work with think of the platform team as the platform, and it's an important distinction that a platform is a product. It's there may be a team that manages it, or a team that maintains it even, and then maybe a separate team that designs it, maybe a separate team that builds it, but it's a thing. It's this internal, it's a product, it's a platform, it's made up of many
Right.
pieces. So just like any
Mm-hmm.
complex software product, it's everyone's going to look different. There isn't one platform to rule them all. Usually we start and find an orchestrator, and we have opinions on this, and we'll talk about some of that too. Let me all
Okay,
right.
we've got it up. See a really
Yeah.
complex architecture diagram here.
Yeah, so this is what I like to call a little bit of it's like a platform economy. Um,
Okay.
one of the first things we need to do is we need to understand how the tool, like what tools are in place, what pathways, how things work together. But there's some social dynamics to that as well. One pitfall that people have is they think one platform to rule them all. This is a big challenge when it comes to our interaction with data teams and things. They say, well, we're going to use, insert tool here for all of the observability. We're not going to use your observability tool platform team. I mean, yeah, sure, great, cool, thank you. But the challenge, the concept, the challenge is we want to provide access to a tool like that, and we want to be able to say, okay, so how do we work with you, service provider of the data platform? How do we provide our other users with the ability to use your platform? And that turns into like this contributor or this kind of user relationship with other platforms. So if I jump through this diagram a little bit, um, we're trying to give people a framing that we have a platform team, and that platform team is going to be made up of multiple roles, like some dev, some SRE, some IT or infrastructure, right? Probably operations, product management, maybe design. We're trying to say less and less of UI UX because that tends to have a make it look pretty feel when that's not what this is about. So we're saying
Mm-hmm.
design more and more, or user experience more and more. But
All
that
right.
platform team, right, is managing a platform. That platform, and if we look at the platform engineering white paper from the CNCF, it gives this kind of diagram and outline as well. So there are aspects and attributes of platforms, things that you need to operate the platform and capabilities and things you should provide. So I encourage folks to read the white paper. That also is going to get some refreshes going into KubeCon EU in 2026. So I'm excited about that.
Uh,
But
how would someone find white paper? What's the title? What do they search for?
sure, platform engineering white paper, CNCF. It should be maybe the top, probably the top result on Google. Let's see here.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I would do platform white paper CNCF. And the new website for the technical community group is cloudnativeplatforms.com, but it's the same link as the existing from Tag App Delivery. I'll pull it over here in my view. So here's the CNCF platforms white paper.
All
This
right.
is at tagappdelivery.cncf.io, but we'll share, I'm sure you'll share the updated link. So this talks
Sure.
about why platforms, what is a platform, platform maturity, and we'll show the platform maturity model, attributes of platform teams, challenges with platforms. So this kind of gives you what you need to know to get started, how to measure
Mm-hmm.
success. But this is a diagram that, let's see if I can zoom effectively here. This is a diagram in the white paper that a lot of folks we want them to start from, and there's a lot of different variety for how these are documented by different companies. But product and applications teams typically interact with interfaces, right? Interfaces will be CLIs, APIs, portals, other things. It's what do they touch in order to do their jobs. And what do they use? So there's oftentimes we have to have documentation, we need project templates, like all of that is a part of if you're onboarding a new developer and putting them in a seat today, what would you point them to and what can they read and what can they use in self-service and how can they onboard themselves? A lot of that self-service. But
Mm-hmm.
those are providing access to things behind the scenes, like developers often don't need to know if their code is running on insert cloud provider here. We want to provide an experience that isolates them from that in some cases, in most cases, for data, for messaging. And I think we're going to see some evolution of these this year with these platform capabilities, but it's a good starting point. So what does CI/CD look like? Now, a challenge is under the hood that we have another subset, which are the service providers or the infrastructure providers. So those are things like other platforms or other teams or other tools that will help the platform teams that will either facilitate access to or help the platform teams run the platform. Um, so this is a good diagram here. When we're looking at this diagram, we're adding a little bit more of a social dynamic to it or like a workflow. So we may have we'll have interfaces. So maybe where does our code live and how do we interact with that? So like GitOps, maybe an observability platform, maybe documentation, maybe that goes in a Confluence, CI/CD orchestration, and then custom portals and apps and other things that are unique to your organization, right? Or things that you may need to build, dashboards, even things like that. So we've got a collection of interfaces. And then we have under the hood, we have things that need to exist and run to keep this operational, make things work. Sometimes those are provided by other groups. So we introduced this concept of service providers or vendors. So that could be third-party vendors, that could be like a Salesforce platform you're integrating with, it could be OpenAI and some other tools, right? These are other teams you need to interact with. Oftentimes, those are driven by other platforms under the hood. So we're showing these interactive points. There's a concept called two-sided markets, which talks about a network effect. It's an economics concept. You can read about it in Harvard Business Review and other things there. Platform teams, our goal is to try to facilitate access to these. So how do we help these teams integrate with this concept of our platform, even if we're reusing certain components? Then how can we provide access and tools and things so we introduce new end users to the abilities that these other tools provide is the big piece there. Now, we mentioned finding abilities to find these technical projects that allow people to participate in the development of the platform. We think that's a very key thing here. If a platform team should not have to build everything on their own, if we provide APIs and interfaces and things that enable the teams that are traditionally our consumers to, hey, you don't like it, contribute to it. Hey, that's a great idea for a feature. Sure, we'll take it over. Please build it. We need to provide those contribution pathways. So we're showing here that maybe a development team owns and uses a particular portal or a tool or multiple of those, but we want to find ways through our interfaces like the Git repositories, the GitOps repositories, and other things to drive that collaboration and drive that self-service. So it looks different for everybody. But then, these guys are going to develop platforms, but then there's a whole full circle thing that ends up happening where our consuming teams may end up becoming some of our service providers, and the cycle starts to repeat there. So for us, we have a strong relationship with SUSE because we really like Rancher. Rancher is a Kubernetes orchestrator, but when we think about picking apart what it means and what are some like pillars of how do we choose certain tools, the reason Rancher was important to us is we talked earlier about that concept where we needed to provide a tool back to the infrastructure teams. Rancher was that tool. We found, hey, if we give these infrastructure teams Rancher, they can go click around, dissect, like basically teach themselves Kubernetes by clicking and modifying. And it gives them a very familiar experience they're used to. So we provide Rancher as a portal or as an interface. It's part of our platform. So Rancher is going to come for the infrastructure teams to consume. They can manage their own infrastructure through that, right? They can pass that through. So they have those capabilities. But the key with Rancher for us is that it's built on industry standards. It facilitates the use of Kubernetes and industry standards. It does not obfuscate away Kubernetes concepts to something proprietary. So it's fulfilling that facilitation requirement for us. It also is extensible. You can build new products, new portals, new platforms, and there's a full component system. You can ship those through Rancher and then have a consolidated kind of single place with some custom applications. So we build platform experiences and things on Rancher, or we often build custom standalone interfaces as well. There's evolution in this space that's happening, though. A lot of folks are trying to adopt Backstage, and Backstage is kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, but is still part of that build your own story. So Backstage is a component system, just like we talked about, but it's built in React, and there's back-end components and there's front-end components, and it allows people to kind of create their own adventure and build these full custom experiences. But the challenge there, and you'd say, why don't we just do everything with Backstage? It's really that develop from scratch that people try to do. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of understanding. It takes a lot of money. There's a build versus buy argument that needs to happen in this development process. We think that something like Rancher for most teams is a much better and much safer place to start. And if you decide to maybe move yourself in a direction where you're going to build your own Rancher, which you don't really need to because you can just build on top of, but it puts you in a better position as a part of your maturity growth. And maybe you start to build a Backstage alongside or maybe interconnect them. And one thing I'm really excited about with Krum this year is, we have a product that we've taken over from SUSE called Ipenio, which is a build pack focused developer portal. But the idea behind Ipenio is that we can give platform engineers a user experience where they can provide application templates and service templates and things to developers. But developers are also users that can come in and use those templates and things that have been configured for them and provided to build from source, like point an application at a repository. I can actually show that. Build an application from a repository, let build packs build that on their own. Let's see. This is a standalone instance. And this is actually an application that's built with the with Rancher component system. So if I go to applications, we've got our screen here, and I hit create, that's going to walk me through as a developer. I don't need to learn containers, right? Let me have a Git URL, or let's do GitHub. Let me select Apinio. Let me select a repository. We'll do the apinio.io website. Let me select a branch, and then I'll select the most recent commit. And then you can't see it, it's off screen. I'll select a build pack and hit, well, if I want to add additional options or environmental variables, then I can do that. Then I hit create and I go, and the application builds, deploys. It uses the standards that my platform engineers or security teams have said. It ships with application policies and templates. It kind of drives that interaction. So being focused on those experiences is strong, but the challenge that we have there is we need a component system that is more of a platform toolkit that is framework agnostic. And since Backstage is built in React, it limits the skill sets that we can reuse from our application development teams. If our organization isn't ready for React, if we do everything in Vue, if we do everything in Angular, if we have a mix of tools, it limits the scope of collaboration that we can do. So we're actually building out a platform toolkit based on web components and other things to be more of a from the bottom, like of a platform assembly toolkit that can help create interconnected experiences between these tools without being an all-in on one interface like a Backstage or a Rancher might be. So we're going to have a lot of fun with that this year as well, but we think that that's a big hole in the market that people are missing.
All right, all right. Wow. Quite fascinating. Thanks for just walking us through all of these ideas and even showing us Epinio and what it looks like and doing a walkthrough of that. Quite fascinating. And I'm sure it gives everyone watching and listening here a very crystal clear understanding of your approach to platform engineering. And I'm sure that they're going away with notes for things that they could take away and implement. So yeah, really useful stuff here. Thanks for demoing this. We're winding down. Lastly, I just wanted to get some closing thoughts from you about, where you see all of this headed in the next year, what you see developing, and what you've got your eyes on as you look ahead to the next few months and a year. What excites you? What are you watching? What any closing comments on that as we look ahead?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we're going to see uh, maybe toward the end of the year, but I think we're going to see a tremendous focus on user experience, whether we call it that or not. I think evidence of that is the focus that we're seeing or the interest we're seeing right now in observability. The big challenge is how do we provide better observability into like our artificial intelligence and machine learning workloads and how things are happening there, where our spend is going. There's a massive complexity of tools that we need to provide for that as well. But the thing when I back up from that, I think it's giving people the right tools at the right time to understand what's going on or to understand how to do their jobs, which just comes right back. I think observability tools typically give us a topology and some other visualizations that we expect. And that's one of the reasons for that. But I'm looking forward to seeing more interconnected experiences. I think we need to give people purposeful tools that fit their scope and their definition. Like give the networking guys a networking tool, right? Something that keeps them in focus, keeps them in their scope, and helps them excel at the way they're used to thinking and operating. But don't keep them out of other tools. Like help find ways for them to overlap and interact with other teams. So why not create a method or a way that when they click on something in their network observability tool or that load balancer, take them to the security tool that the security teams are using to get the information and the context that security teams are going to ask them about anyway. So give them some ability to access those tools. And to take it a step further, why can't we pull some aspects of that security tool into our network tool in that case and show them just enough information, just enough context to help them have that interaction process. So I'm hoping, and that's one thing that we're trying to drive with these components, if we can help the industry understand that it's not about one tool to rule them all, that we need to be able to help people move left and right, and like move horizontally across the stack to use different tools more effectively so that they can use the right tool when they need it and bounce back and forth and get to the right tools. I think that's going to save a lot of time for people. That's going to help improve user experience for a lot of people and ultimately drive platform adoption and ultimately deliver tremendous business value. So we're excited to see that. But I think why we haven't seen it before now is it just is needed to evolve to that point. And so our focus on platform as product and user experience and the need to be able to have observability tools, yeah, I think we're there and I think we're ready for it. So I'm hoping that 2026 delivers for that. For me as a user, selfishly.
All right, all right. Wow. That's quite an exciting comment to end our fascinating conversation. What I loved most about it is just how you just talk about the practice behind platform engineering and really got down to like the nitty-gritty details of really what goes into it. And clearly, that comes from just you working on the front lines with various organizations, seeing many different scenarios, and being able to piece together all of the different moving parts and give us like a whole, like the top level view, and then zoom into even each part of what it involves. So quite fascinated with just all that you had to say. I thought it was a really, really insightful conversation around platform engineering. Definitely one of the most insightful and practical conversations we've had on this show, even though we've probably spoken about platform engineering maybe 20 times in the past 2 years or so. I think this was definitely one of the most practical and actionable talks we've had on the show so far. I really quite enjoyed it. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Twain. I appreciate the opportunity and I would love to do it again. Let's do some follow-ups.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And thanks to all of our listeners and viewers for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as we did, bringing it to you. And if you like this, tune in again for the next conversation. We'll be talking about something else on the same lines. We'll see you on that one. Take care. Bye bye.